Hey folks, Quilly18 here, and welcome to a guide to Magic the Gathering Arena for complete beginners. Magic the Gathering, in case you've been living under a rock for the last 25 years, is the granddaddy of all collectible card games. It's the granddaddy in two different ways. One, it's literally the first one. And there's so many things that we just, sort of take for granted and assume this is the way things work that were invented and revolutionized by Magic the Gathering, and no one had ever thought of it. Literally, they patented the idea of turning a card sideways to show that it has been tapped. It is just mind-boggling to consider that there was a time where, people hadn't come up with this idea. It's like banging two rocks together to make sparks to make fire. Magic the Gathering invented it. Despite that, it is in no way primitive. It is still, despite the probably, dozens, if not hundreds of competitors that have come out over the years, it is still the most successful and the one with the most strategic depth. Despite this, it's not that hard to learn. And it's very rewarding to do so. There have been a few different digital adaptations of Magic the Gathering over the years, and a lot of them have been very strong, but to me, there's a sort of, it's like a Goldilocks thing, right? This one is too hot, this one is too cold. Magic the Gathering Arena is the oatmeal that's just perfect. Okay, I think I'm stretching this metaphor a little bit, but it's just hitting that sweet spot because it is the full and complete Magic experience. It is the full and complete deck building experience, but in a really slick, really fantastic user interface that is just a dream to use. I also am quite keen on the on the way that you purchase and purchase cards and have the ability to craft cards in this game. This game is free to download. I should talk about that. I mean, obviously this is a sponsored video. You guys saw the blurb at the start of the thing. It's a sponsored video. This is free to download, and you can keep playing it for free. There are many ways to earn gold in the game, so there are daily quests, for example. So here I've got 3 over here. These quests, worth noting, can be completed by playing against the AI. So if you're just learning out and you want a low-stress environment, you can absolutely do that. So you've got these quests here. There's also this quest here to win a daily game. This, you have to play against a human being for that. But yeah, so you can earn a bunch of gold, and gold can be used to purchase packs. So for example, if I go to packs, I don't have any available right now. If I go to packs, I can spend 1,000 gold. Purchase some packs. There you go. Let me buy all my gold. Excellent. And then you can go and we can open this. It's worth noting that there are multiple different sets of Magic over the years. So I started playing Magic the Gathering in 4th edition during the Ice Age block. So Ice Age Alliance, and was it Heartlands back then? Technically, they've replaced Heartlands now for like a retro redo of the block. They've replaced Heartlands with a different set because Heartlands was a little on the weaker side when it came out. But Iceland and Alliance were such good expansions back then. Anyway, and every now and again, so they come out with a new version of the base game. So this is the core set for 2020. So these are the basic cards that basically... how's the best way to describe it? These give you your baseline experience. These are the core cards that sort of need to exist, and then the expansions tend to add wacky stuff with very, very, very different mechanics, and they have blocks that cycle in and out of standard play. There's also, back when I used to play, it was called Tier 1, Tier 1.5, and Tier 2, but basically there's a sort of current standard block, and then there's various historical blocks, which is really nice for various game balance and keeping the game fresh as things come in and out. But anyway, let's open one of these packs. So in Magic the Gathering Arena, when you open a pack, it's got 5 common cards in it, 2 uncommon, and 1 rare card. The one thing that I really like about this as well is as you open packs, you will also get these wild cards. So uncommon and rare wild cards, and as you open packs, you'll see some progression towards that. And sometimes, perfect timing. Thank you, game. God, it's almost like I'd scripted this. Sometimes you will also, rather than a card by itself, you will directly get a wild card. So as you open packs, you will get these wild card or progress towards wild cards. So every Xth pack, you will get some wild card progression. But in addition to that, sometimes you will get this. And what you can do is you can use to craft any card you might be missing. So you don't have to rely on too much RNG. What is this thing? Scheming Symmetry. I haven't played Magic in a while, so I started in 4th edition. I really peaked, it's still 5th edition during the Tempest and Urza block. That was during university for me. Yes, I'm old. Shush. And that's when I was doing tournaments and things like that. I had a really great black deck that I really, really loved back then. And I haven't played as much in the last few years. And as such, there's a lot of new cards where I'm going to have to stop and read and check things. But yeah, anyway, I really like that. So when you're making a deck, and while this video here, we're not going to focus on making a deck, but when you are making a deck, if you're missing a card, let's say, okay, I have 3 tactical advantages. Let's say I'm making a white deck. We're going to talk about these colors in a second here. I have 3 tactical advantages. Let's say I really want 4. First of all, I love the fact that you can make the deck. Like, you can design your deck and save your deck and name it, choose your format. It's going to be standard. That's going to be fine. And everything, even with cards you don't currently have. But then you can craft it. So if I need that last tactical advantage, I will be able to simply craft it using a wild card. So I have, it's going to use a common wild card. Where? I'm sure somewhere on the screen. Oh, crafting button? I'm sure somewhere on the screen it will tell you how many wild cards you've got. Oh, there, right there. I'd just forgotten. So I have 11 common wild cards available to myself. So if I'm missing something, I can just go ahead and craft that. And I think that's a very, very, very spiffy system. We're going to play around using a deck versus the AI to talk about how the game works before we do any sort of deck construction thing. But the thing to remember about Magic the Gathering is what I've been amazed by it since when I've started playing is the rules have consistently got cleaner and cleaner. When I started with 4th edition, and then 5th edition came out with a cleaner set of rules. 6th edition came out and cleaned up a lot more rules. Oh my god. 6th edition, I think, is the one where they got rid of interrupts and introduced the instant stack, or the effect stack. Oh my god, so much better. It was amazing how much it cleaned up and simplified the rules literally without costing a single ounce of strategic depth. Everything you could do before, you could still do, but it was such a cleaner system. Turns out the game didn't need interrupts, which is another card type. We'll talk about card types when we actually get into the deck thing. The game didn't need interrupts. You could get rid of an entire class of cards. They all just got relabeled to be instants instead of interrupts, and it didn't change the game at all, and yet made the rules just so much cleaner. And that continues to be the case. At some point, I don't remember, 7th or 8th edition, they changed it so that damage effects don't go on the queue. And it's like, at the time, it was like, what? That's so weird. And then it turns out, oh, it literally makes no true difference to gameplay, but the rules are cleaner. What? How? Anyway, I've just been amazed by these guys, how they've continued to make the game fresh over the last 25 years. It's the granddaddy of all CCGs, and I will never stop saying good things about Magic the Gathering. I have been addicted a little bit in the past. So anyway, so yes, despite the fact that they've been cleaning it up and everything like that, it is still by far the game with the most amount of depth that exists, period. Let's go ahead and play around, and then we'll talk about how the game plays. So there are a variety of different modes of gameplay that you can do in Magic the Gathering Arena. And actually, you can toggle this for even more game modes over here for a little bit more variation. Yeah, it's just nutso over here. But we're gonna play a bot match over here. And the nice thing about a bot match is that, again, you can do these daily quests and get gold just by playing against the bot. Now, my quests right now, I have 2 things, just happen to work out that way, 2 quests that require me to cast X number of red or white spells. So let's go ahead and let's play the red deck because it's got dragons in it. And who doesn't love dragons? These are 5 starter decks over here that you're going to get when you get the game. So you start with a bunch of cards all ready to go. Yeah, so we're going to play this one. Each one of these decks is a single color. There's no reason that you are limited to a single color, though, when you build decks. If you make your own custom deck, you can you could have all 5 colors present in it. Nothing is stopping you from doing that. And in fact, many of the strongest decks that exist, actually these days, I suspect all of the strongest decks that exist are multicolored decks. At least 2. 3 is fairly typical. The third one might be more secondary, might be a little bit of a splash. Like, you might have a deck that's mostly white and red, but with just a little splash of black in there or something like that. Here's our starting hand. So, in Magic the Gathering. So you have a deck of 60 cards. Technically, if you play the paper version, you can make decks that have more than 60 cards. You generally don't want to do that. You actually want the smallest, tightest deck possible. Because let's say you have a 1,000 card deck. Some cards, in any given situation, are going to be better than others. If you had a 1,000 card deck, the chance of you drawing the card you want is going to be very low. Whereas if you have a 60 card deck, which is the minimum size for a standard deck, you are going to have a much tighter deck that you'll draw your combos more often. Because generally speaking, you want some sort of synergistic combo-ish mechanic going on in your deck, and so you want a small tight deck. You can have up to 4 copies of each card in your deck, except basic land. You can have any number of them. So basic land, there's 1 basic land for each color, and that gives you mana of that color. So we're playing a pure red deck here, so the only lands we've got in here are mountains, which generate red mana for us, and all our cards will be red cards, although I think we may have some artifacts in our deck as well, which are colorless. Here's our starting hand. So we draw 7 cards. One of the neat things about Arena, and I don't believe any previous digital version of Magic has done this, and you couldn't do this in real life. It simply wouldn't work. In behind the scenes, when you're playing a standard game, best of 1, as I don't think it applies to the best 2 out of 3, but the best of 1, behind the scenes, what the game does is it actually draws 2 starting hands, 2 different starting hands, and then it gives you the one that has a number of land closest to the average likely for your deck. So in your deck, you're going to have a certain amount of sort of spell cards and a certain amount of basic land cards. And based on that, with a 7-card hand, your average will be, let's say, about 3 land card is how many land you're expected to have in any 7 cards. So it'll draw 2 starting hands and give you the one that is closest to the average. That means that typically you will start with 3 land in your hand if you have a normal amount of land in there. And you're slightly less likely, but still, fairly likely to start with 2 or 4 land in here. So we only started with 2, which means there's a possibility we might be a bit short on mana, which would be kind of sucky because it could stop us from developing our hand very aggressively. But it so happens every card that we've got in our hand, other than 1, is only going to cost us 2 mana. The cost of a card is in the top right corner. This Dreadhorn Arcanist costs 2 mana to cast. 1 has to be red, the other can be of any color. That's what that means. The Ember Hauler needs 2 red mana. Lalfis Dragon Queen costs a whopping 6 mana to put into play, or mana. Mana or mana, up to you. 6 mana, 2 of which must be red. There are cards that are multicolored. They would be like, oh, you need 1 blue and 1 black, and 3 of any other mana to cast the spell. You'll see stuff like that happen. But not in this deck, because it's a pure red. So I'm going to keep this. I could mulligan. What would happen is I would draw a new hand, and my starting hand, I would only have 6 cards instead. So if I mulligan, but I'm going to go ahead and keep those. That's going to be okay. Also, I didn't notice, okay, my opponent is starting first. So I'm playing against Sparky here, the AI. Sparky is not terribly intimidating, so very easy to practice and really easy to burn out those daily quests without having to, play against a human if you still feel like you're starting off and you're shy. I do have to say, the true experience of any of these card games, and Magic in particular, play against a human being. I mean, that is the true experience. All right, so now it's our turn. At the start of your turn, you draw a card. Technically, there's the upkeep and draw step. So if some cards will have an upkeep, and upkeep is also when you untap stuff, and then you draw a card. If you are the first player, okay, if so, at the start of the game, you flip a coin to determine who goes first. The player who goes first doesn't draw a card in their first turn. So Sparky started with 7 cards in its hand? We'll go with his. Sparky started with 7 cards in his hand and didn't draw on his first turn. So all he did is play a mountain. So apparently Sparky's going to be playing a red deck as well. And now he's got 6 cards in there. We, on the other hand, did draw on our first go. So we currently have 8 cards in our hand. We are getting a note that if we, at the end of our turn, we may have to discard down. 7 cards is the hand limit. However, you can have more than 7 cards in your hand until the end of your turn, at which point you have to discard. If somehow on Sparky's turn, I manage to draw 20 cards, I get to start my turn with still 20 cards in my hand. That's fine. It's not until the end of my turn I have to discard, which is kind of neat. On every turn, you can play 1 and only 1 land. So I will play a mountain. Boom, done. And then my turn ends because I literally can't play anything. So you can only put one basic land in on your turn, and that limits how quickly things can develop. Sparky didn't play anything with the second mountain either. Sparky might have a really expensive hand going on. Interesting. So I drew another mountain, so I got 2 in my hand. I will play one of them. And now I have a handful of cards I can play. I'm really happy I drew a mountain because, you know, at least I won't be stuck at 2. I still need at least 1 more to be able to eventually cast the Erratic Cyclops, which costs me 4 mana, one of which must be red. But for now, I can put down one of my other cards. Dreadhorn Arcanist has a lot of text. Let's ignore most of the text for a second. So this costs 2 mana, one of which must be red. The bottom right corner there, you can see the basic statistics of this card. It is a 1/3. It has an attack of 1 and a toughness of 3. So if the Dreadhorn Arcanist takes 3 points of damage, it will die. Unlike some other card games you may have played, damage in Magic the Gathering does not persist between turns. At the end of my turn, all my creatures heal to full. So if the Arcanist takes 2 damage, at the end of my turn, he heals back up to 3, period, done. And attack is how much damage it does in battle. Then it's got a bunch of text here. So it's got Trample, which is an ability we'll talk about a little bit later. Whenever Dreadhorn Arcanist attacks, you may cast target instant or sorcery card with converted mana cost less than or equal to the Dreadhorn's Arcanist power from your graveyard without paying its mana cost. Okay. There's a lot of text. Now, Dreadhorn Arcanist is a rare card. It's got a little golden symbol. Let me find another card here to showcase. Okay, Goblin Instigator. See, oh, I can't mouse over because it goes away. See on like the right-hand side of this card, sort of in the middle, it's got that M19 in there. That tells you what set this card is from. The black background tells you it's common. The Ember Hauler is from, it says M20. This is from the 2020 core set, and it's silver, which tells you it's uncommon. And then, oh, there we go. Lolthis over here is from the 2019 core set, M19, but it's gold because it's a rare. Dreadhorn Assistant is also a rare, that's a gold symbol, from a particular expansion. And the cards from the expansions tend to have a much more complicated effect and extra text. But basically, the Arcanist here says, I can cast spells from my graveyard. What's the graveyard? Your library is your deck of cards. So the cards I haven't drawn yet, this is the library. Your discard pile, right now neither one of us have anything on our discard pile, that is your graveyard. So he lets me play spells from my graveyard. It's worth noting that other than land, basically everything else in Magic, barring a couple of exceptions, are spells. So this Ember Hauler, which is what I'm going to put into play right now, which costs 2 mana, as in a 2/2 creature, is a summoning spell. I will cast the spell to summon this Ember Hauler. And then once the spell has completed, assuming it wasn't countered by my opponent, which would be something if Sparky was playing blue, I would have to be somewhat nervous about, because blue is like manipulation. Blue is also the color you play if you're a big jerk face, because no one likes playing against blue, because blue is like, oh, blue's gonna like bounce your creatures back into your hand, or you try to cast a spell, oh, blue's gonna counter that spell. Oh. Red is the color of like pure unbridled aggression, generally speaking. Red also has a lot of cards that deal direct damage. So Shock is a spell that deals 2 damage to any target. I can use this to hit Sparky. Both of us, by the way, start at 20 hit points. If we get down to 0, or I should say life, 20 life. If we get down to 0 life, we lose, game over. So Shock can be used to hit Sparky directly, or I could use it to hit a creature. So I could use it to hit Chandra's Spitfire here, although because Chandra's Spitfire has 3 toughness, I would not be able to kill it with just Shock. Shock is also an instant, whereas summoning spells and sorceries, which are another type of spell, can only be cast during your main phase. So on your turn, during the main part of your turn, is the only time you can summon creatures or cast sorceries. Instants can be cast at any time, including on your opponent's turn, including in response to something else happening. Anyway, Red's got a lot of these direct damage spells. Black has a lot of, like, evil creatures that, like, sacrifice themselves or others, and a lot of spells that directly and immediately kill another creature. Blue's got that sort of counter spell, lots of card draw, manipulation, very sorcerous. Green is like the deck of big, giant, stompy creatures. Green has a lot of cards that generate extra mana, or maybe let you dig through your deck to find more land more quickly, so that you can put out giant creatures that cost like 8 mana and are just big, giant, badass, stompy things. White has... I don't know how you would like qualify white. I feel white has a lot of... to me, thematically, white has like a lot of like soldiers and knights that like work together and defend each other and things. Is the sense I've got anyway for that. Anyway, it's our turn. We're gonna put another land in here, so now we're up to 3 mana. We don't have anything that costs 3, although we do have some things that cost 2 and 1. Ember Hauler also has the ability to sacrifice itself to deal damage to a target. All right, here's what we're gonna do. I am in my main phase right now. I am in the first main phase. Your turn, again, starts with upkeep and draw, then goes into your main phase. Then there's an attack step, and then you go back into your main phase. And then there's the end phase, your end step, where you discard if you have too many cards and do other cleanup things. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skip my first main phase right now. I'm not going to do anything. I'm just going to hit next. What this is going to do, I'm going to have all my mana. I'm also going to have all my cards and the ability to do various things. So I am now in the sort of pre-combat step. And both players at this point have an opportunity to use instant effects. So Shock, whereas most of my cards no longer glow because they're not allowed to be used right now, Shock is glowing because I can use Shock at this time because it's an instant. Also, I can use Ember Hauler's ability. So Ember Hauler has an ability on it. I pay 1 mana and sacrifice this card, right? It blows itself up, basically, to deal 2 damage to any target. And this is an instant effect, so I could use this now. Note, I couldn't attack with Ember Hauler on the turn where I cast it, because creatures have Summoning Sickness on the turn where they come in. Creatures with Summoning Sickness cannot attack, nor can they use any abilities on their card that requires them to tap. I could use its ability to sacrifice itself on the turn it put into play because it doesn't require to tap this creature. Anyway, I'm not going to do anything right now. I'm going to hit next. So now I'm in the Declare Attackers phase. So I'm going to declare that I want to attack with the Ember Hauler by clicking on it. Right? I can also hit over here, I can hit all attack, and it will automatically set all my creatures to attack. It still gives me a time to confirm, so I can hit all attack, and I still have to hit this button to confirm. So what you can do, if you have like 10 creatures out, you can hit this button and be like, okay, everyone attack. Oh, except you. You don't attack after all, and you can pull them back. Now, unlike other card games, I do not choose who my creatures attack. By default, what they're doing is they're attacking the other player. So I'm trying to attack Sparky here. I don't get to choose to attack Chandra's Spitfire. But after I declare my attackers, my opponent has a chance to declare blockers. And that's entirely what Sparky did. Sparky has declared that Chandra's Spitfire will block the Ember Hauler. What that's going to happen, if I just continue now, and I will in a moment, the Ember Hauler will deal 2 damage to Chandra's Spirit, and simultaneously, Chandra's Spitfire will deal 1 point of damage to me. Neither one of us will die over here. Whenever an opponent has dealt non-combat damage... Okay, that's not going to apply over here. Neither one of these creatures will die. So let me hit next. We'll see the damage. It happens simultaneously. Some creatures have First Strike. That's one of the things that White has a lot of creatures with First Strike. First Strike creatures deal their damage first. So First Strike creatures have the potential to kill an enemy before it hits them back, which is kind of nice. So both of these guys are damaged. At the end of each turn, all creatures heal to full. Damage does not persist in Magic the Gathering. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Shock spell. So I'm going to do Shock. Deals 2 damage to any target. I'm going to Shock the Spitfire to take it out of contention. Very, very nice. Instance. Now here, I cast that instance in my main phase. I didn't have to do it then, but I want to make sure to Shock before the end of the turn so that the thing wouldn't heal automatically. So now I have a creature on the board and he doesn't, which is great. Let me go and put down the Dreadhorde Arcanist. So whenever he attacks, I'll be able to cast spells out of my graveyard, which means I will have the opportunity to cast that Shock again, which is kind of nifty. Oh, and here's a great time for it. So I didn't draw another mana, but that's okay. Here's what we're going to do. So this is a 3/2 creature. Note that creatures tend to have keywords. So this is a human warrior, this is a goblin, this is a zombie wizard. These are keywords that by themselves don't do anything, but other cards might say something like, all your zombies get +1/+1, for example. So that would apply to my Dreadhorde Arcanist. So I'm going to hit next to go into combat. I'm going to go and declare attackers. So I'm going to declare my attackers here. Okay, I'm just going to be lazy and hit this button. And do that. Now, what's going to happen is I now have the ability to cast, because Dreadhorde Arcanist, whenever he attacks, I can cast a card from my graveyard, as long as its mana cost is less than or equal to the Arcanist's power. So the Arcanist was a 1/3, so it has a power of 1. So I can cast the Shock and do it for free. So I'm going to do that and target the Halberdier over here, dealing 2 damage. I know that was like pretty crazy, a little bit advanced. Again, the Arcanist here is from one of the expansions, not the core set, the expansion sets, and they tend to do way crazier things. So a little bit more complicated if you've never played before, but also a sign of like, oh, you can do some crazy stuff in Magic. So there you go. And what's great is I kill that dude before he was able to declare himself as a blocker. Because here's the thing, once a creature becomes blocked, the creature, even if the blocker somehow dies or something before dealing damage, the blocked creature, it still counts as being blocked and will therefore not do damage to the opponent. But here, if I go to damage, I'll do 3 damage to Sparky here. Done. I still have some mana. I may as well put something down. Goblin Instigator, whenever it enters battlefield, which is the area over here, create another 1/1 red goblin creature token. So, you know what? I'm going to do this. So that card comes in. It's a 1/1 goblin, and it puts in a token goblin over here as well. I have 1 mana left, nothing to do with it. I will simply end turn over here. Well, I say nothing to do with it. Technically, I do have something, because the Ember Hauler can use its ability to commit suicide to deal damage to something. It can do this even while tapped, because tapping isn't the cost. That's really interesting. Sparky is using a spell called Command the Storm. And it will deal 5 damage to target creature. He's targeting the Ember Hauler. My Ember Hauler is going to die as soon as Command the Storm is done resolving. But here's the thing that happens in Magic. There is a stack for effects. Someone casts a spell or takes some sort of action or something. The other player can then respond to that by casting their own, it has to be instant, but casting their own instant spell or using an effect on a creature or something like that, that happens at instant speed, which is by default. So Command the Storm is currently on the stack. It's sort of queued up to happen, but it hasn't happened yet. So before Command the Storm resolves, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my Ember Hauler's ability to spend 1 mana. So the cost to use this ability, I have to spend 1 mana and sacrifice the Ember Hauler itself, but it deals 2 damage to any target, so I'm going to target Sparky. And Ember Hauler's sacrifice ability will trigger before the spell. So I'm going to go ahead and submit this. So what's going to happen, Command the Storm is simply going to fizzle, because its target is no longer there. Sparky doesn't get a chance to change targets or do anything like that. Sparky just cast a 5 mana, incredibly powerful spell that, well, it's not that it did nothing. It forced me to sacrifice my creature, but I still got extra value out of the creature. So take that, Sparky. I'm going to go ahead and put another mountain into play. Excellent. So I've got a few different options. I could put in Havoc Devils, which has the trample ability. So what happens normally when a creature blocks? So again, when I attack, my creature simply attacks Sparky, and then Sparky gets the option to choose one of his creatures to block mine, or as many creatures as he's got to block as many creatures as he wants. Normally what happens is both creatures simply deal damage to each other, and some may or may not die. Let's say I had a creature with like 100 attack power. It is a 100/100 creature. A big giant monster of doom. And Sparky had a 1/1. I attack with my 100/100. Sparky blocks with his 1/1. I deal 100 damage to the 1/1. The 1/1 deals 1 damage back. Obviously the 1/1 dies, and obviously mine does not. But that's it. Sparky himself doesn't take any damage. Things with trample, though, work differently. They only deal as much damage as they need to kill a creature, and then all excess damage spills over to hit your enemy. So in that case, if my 100/100 had trample, it would deal 1 damage to the 1/1 blocker, and then 99 damage to Sparky. Really nice ability. Erratic Cyclops, ooh, okay, it has trample, good. Whenever you cast an instance or sorcery spell, Erratic Cyclops get +X/+0 until end of turn, where X is that spell's converted mana cost. Converted mana cost means the total mana cost. So the converted mana cost of erratic, Cyclops itself is 4, right? 1 red and 3 others, but you would say 4 is the converted mana cost in this case. So the Cyclops is normally just a 0/8. It can't really do any damage, but if you cast spells, then it starts to smash face. Only for instants and sorcery spells, so it doesn't trigger if you cast, say, another summoning spell for a creature. I think the thing to do here will be to cast Havoc Devils, but I'm not going to cast it now. Unless you specifically want this card to be in play before you attack, it's always good to do your attack first, which is what I'm going to do. And the reason for it is, right now I'm attacking, I still have all my mana and all my cards in hand. My opponent doesn't know what I have in my hand. And I might have like instants that I may want to use in combat. So I want to save all my mana and all my cards to have as an option to cast in combat. It turns out currently all these are just summoned creatures. I can't use them in middle of an attack, but my opponent doesn't know that. So I'm going to attack with all 3. Technically, the Dreadhorde Arcanist might have let me cast a spell from my graveyard, but I didn't have an instance or sorcery with a cost of 1 or less, so that was no go. Now that the combat is over, I'm going to go ahead and put down Havoc Devils into play. And if Havoc Devils had haste, hasted creatures don't get summoning sickness, so they could have attacked on the turn they come in. But since Havoc Devils doesn't, he couldn't have attacked this turn anyway, so I'll cast it after combat. What's happening? Oh no, you're doing a bunch of damage to me! Chandra's Pyrohelix. Deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Oh, so you killed both my 1/1 goblins. Oh well. Sure Strike. Target creature gets +3/+0 and first strike until the end of the turn. That is interesting. I'm just going to go ahead and next go to combat. I'm going to go next and declare attackers. I'm going to declare all my attackers. You're not going to do anything. I do have the option of casting Sure Strike right now, which would deal 3 more damage. But it's not enough to kill Sparky, so I may as well save it in my hand. The first strike ability is really nice because it allows your creature to deal its damage first, and sometimes if someone blocks you, you might be able to kill them first, especially with +3 extra attack, before they hit you. So I'll just go ahead and hit next, go to damage. Done. Okay, now I'm going to put in the Erratic Cyclops. He's got Summoning Sickness, he wasn't going to be able to attack this turn anyway. And next turn, I'll be able to, say, use Sure Strike on him, and it'll trigger his ability as well, which will all be kind of nice. Oh, Meteor Golem! Okay, Meteor Golem is an artifact creature. So artifacts can be creatures or just artifacts, which are sort of just standalone little devices that might give you some sort of persistent ability or gives you some ability you can use. This is an artifact creature. Basically acts the same as every other creature. It's a 3/3 creature. It costs 7 to play. 7 mana for a 3/3? Ooh, that doesn't seem like a good deal. Yeah, but just wait. First of all, artifacts are colorless, so this was 7 mana of any color. Didn't have to be red, white, or anything like that. And then, yeah, as a bonus, when it comes into play, it destroys a target non-land permanent. So it just picks one thing that's in play and kills it. A permanent, it means anything that stays on the board here. So that's creatures, land, enchantments, and artifacts are all permanents that could be immediately destroyed by the golem, except it doesn't allow you to destroy land in this particular situation. So you just killed one of my creatures straight out. I'm going to put a mountain in. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to attack. I'm going to attack with both. Now let's see what he does. All right, Sparky has declared that Meteor Golem will block Dreadhorde Arcanist, and the Erratic Cyclops will not be blocked. So the Cyclops is still going for Sparky. Fair enough. Well, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to cast Sure Strike, targeting my Arcanist. So this is going to give my Arcanist +3 attack this turn, so it's going to become a 4/3 until the end of the turn. And it's also going to get first strike, which means my Arcanist is going to deal its 4 damage to the Golem before the Golem deals 3 damage to my Arcanist. Therefore, I will kill the Golem and not lose the Arcanist. Bam! Lovely. Oh! Wait, why do you have Trample? Was Trample's on the card to start off with. I forgot about that. So I dealt 3 damage to the Golem, and 1 extra damage trampled over to hit Sparky. Awesome. I may as well put the Ember Hauler into play now. And what was interesting, because I wasn't sure what was going to happen, I could still use Ember Hauler's ability to deal 2 damage. It's not enough to get a kill, though. I suppose I just realized I lost out on lethal. If I had cast my Sure Strike on the Erratic Cyclops, the Dreadhorde Assistant would have died, but the Cyclops would have dealt 5 total damage to Sparky, instead of only 2, and therefore I would have then been able to use the Ember Hauler to finish off Sparky. I missed lethal, you guys. Turns out it's still gonna be okay. I've still got 20 health, and I've got the a super strong board going on. Notice I have an ability to resolve here. There's a resolve button because I have the ability to respond to what Sparky is doing. Sparky is trying to summon Chandra Spitfire. I could use Ember Hauler's ability here to sacrifice itself to do damage to Sparky before Spitfire comes into play. There's no reason to do that. I will allow this to get resolved. Notice there is a pass turn button over here. If you enable this, it will sort of auto-skip some stuff. So this is now the attack phase. Note, my opponent is not actually attacking, but there's still an attacking phase, and I'm being prompted because, again, it's an opportunity. I'm allowed to use the Hauler. I won't. We're going to go through combat over here. Nothing's going to happen. I'm just going to keep passing. And so Sparky is now done. It's at the end of Sparky's end phase. I have one more opportunity to use an instant ability, but I'm not going to. But it's worth noting that right before your opponent's turn ends, you have a chance to use your instants, which is often a great time to do it. Spend your mana, which is then going to immediately get untapped in your turn, which is great. Now, I'm gonna win simply by attacking. No, I'm not, actually. If Sparky blocks my Hauler, I will deal 1 damage from the Arcanist, and I can sacrifice the Hauler for 2 more, but he won't die. Dragon, flying. Whenever another dragon enters the battlefield, create a 5/5 dragon with flying. Buff dragons. I'm not going to win right now. God, I could have killed him last turn. And instead, I'm not going to do that. So yeah, you're going to block that way. We're going to go to damage. And do that. The Arcanist is going to do 1 damage. That's it. I think it's worth... Ooh. If I use the Hauler's ability to kill this, I won't have enough mana to summon the Dragon Queen, which is obviously unacceptable. Dragons are awesome. We haven't talked about flying yet. Flying is very simple. When a flying creature attacks, it can't be blocked by non-flying creatures, because you're flying overhead. Some creatures have an ability called Reach, which does allow you to block flying creatures, but that's about it. Pyromancer, when it enters the battlefield, deal 2 damage to target player or planeswalker. Hey, there you go. I'm not going to win by attacking. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to play the Pyromancer. When it comes into play, it will do 2 damage to... I could deal it to myself. Let's not do that. Let's deal it to Sparky. Ooh, who's thinking about resolving? Okay, or responding. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to sacrifice my Hauler to deal 2 damage to Sparky that way. Just because. Boom. And we have now won. Excellent. And every spell I cast, and remember that the creatures, I mean, unless I'm wrong and things have changed, but I'm pretty sure I haven't, creatures are summoning spells. So look at that. I have cast 11 red or white spells, clearly red spells. Therefore, progressing on both of those, which is great. One more match, I'll probably finish this, and I'll be able to open a new pack, which is really fun to me. Anyway, that is it for this very first tutorial, the very basics how to play. If you do download Magic the Gathering Arena, which is free, there is actually an amazing tutorial built into the game to teach you sort of what we've just done over here. There will be some more videos coming later on, which will probably do some deck building. And I'm very much looking forward to that. We can sort of strategize about what we might want to do. We'll probably do some sort of multicolored deck, so we can talk about some of the considerations for something like that. But hope you enjoyed this video. Hope it was useful. And I really, really have loved Magic the Gathering for so long. It actually does make me quite happy to spread a little bit of this love. Thanks for watching. See you next time, folks. Bye-bye.